What's up guys, Cloudie here checking in from the America server, and today's video is of course gonna be about the new hero Izalette. So let's get to it, let's see what she can do and what she can do. As usually we're gonna start by transcending her to tier 5, if I can click the buttons, and while we go through her purification and then her transcendence animations, I can talk a little bit about her, and then we can go through her skills and her gears and what all she is about. So on paper, she looked really promising, borderline OP. But it turns out that she is not a Panzeron version 2, but more like a more relaxed Panzeron. She is very good actually at what she is meant to do, in my opinion, but she's not as versatile and as broadly usable as Pansy. So if you are like a new player thinking if you should make her your main, she can work in a lot of environments, different contents, but not everywhere, so may not be the best choice as a first hero, but she does fulfill some niche roles where physical was a bit lacking, and in those roles she is absolutely great. So in my opinion she's pretty good. So let's go through her purification. And also, as you can see, her animations and her design is just absolutely gorgeous. One of the most beautiful characters, if you ask me, but maybe it's just because dark hair and blue eyes have always been something I really loved. But yeah, so while we go through these, I believe her two intended roles are Galgoria Raid, which is of course the new go-to place for the best gears in the game, at least for DPS characters, and Trial of Flow, where if you were a physical main, you kind of struggled to find the wizard DPS, so if you wanted to farm gear for your priests or soul weapons for your priests, then you had a hard time because you had to raise a magic DPS for that. So now you have Isolet. She can fulfill the role of a wizard both in Galgoria raids and also in Trial of Flow, and she does pretty well in both of those contents. In a moment when we check out her skills, you will get to see why. And as said, she's just really beautiful. So let's see. She is doing elemental magic, as you can see, and that's in her description too, that her technologically augmented elemental magic is raging on, and then her damage type is physical, which is a bit of a controversy to me, but I guess it just means that Vespa really wanted to make a physical wizard, so that's what it is, really. Okay, let's see what we have with Izalette. So to understand her kit, we have to look at her skill 4 first, because that really defines her usefulness. So let's see, Isolette's attack speed is fixed to 1000, so it's the same as Crow, that she cannot get faster, and she's not affected by skill cooldown reduction effects. Which means in a lot of scoring content she will not be great, because those rely on those burst windows where you reset with Oddly and do a lot of damage. So that doesn't work on her. Because of this, she will probably be not great at like Welkazar or world bosses and stuff like that. That's my prediction on her. I'm not sure if anyone has really tested in those. But yeah, let's see. As a result, to kind of make up for this restriction on her, she recovers 1500 mana every time she is casting a skill. So that's pretty good. That's a lot of mana, and she will need it because she's mana hungry. And her crit damage is increased by 100% when she does this. Now, there was a post about this in the Facebook group by one of the admins who said that this was translated incorrectly to English and that it actually means that her crit damage is fixed 100%. But that would make no sense because this is in the buff section, and yeah, they also said that in other languages it is translated correctly, so I tried reading it in German, but it didn't say that there. I also, well, my Japanese is a bit scuffed, so I couldn't quite read it. I asked the native speaker who said it was increased by, and I also asked the native speaker who could read simplified Chinese, and they also said it is increased by, not fixed to. So I'm not quite sure about that information. If you guys speak any of the other languages or any of those languages and can read the skill, I would love to hear that in the comment section. Like, what do you make of this skill there? But I have also done some testing with like gear on her, if you have seen it while I opened her character sheet, and I did switch in crit damage gear without changing any of her stats, and her crits became higher. So I do not think that this is actually correct what was posted there in the Facebook group. She just gains 100% crit damage when she casts, and then there is a bit of a bonus from her skill books. Now also when she creates explosive reaction, this is her S2, her attack increases by 4%, and this can stack up to 15 times and is irremovable. So that's a lot of attack. That's like 60%. Math is hard. So yeah, 60%. And it's not dispellable, which is really, really, really good. Means that she just gets way stronger as she does her combos. And then her other skill, Blazing Storm, this is also one of her combo skills. Her DM damage that all allies take is reduced by 7%, and this can be stacked up to 3 times, so 21%, and is also removable. So this is very, very powerful self-buff and group-wide buff against magic damage, because of course magic has the upper hand, lol. And well, yeah, she does come with some very strong restrictions, so yeah, the attack speed does hurt a bit, especially with her auto attacks, which are really, really slow. And her skills cannot be reset, which means she's not really good for scoring content, but she does work pretty well in the content that she's made for. So let's see what are her actively used skills. Devouring Flame. So this is a 2 mana 7 second cooldown skill which will hit frontal enemies and ignite them. This does damage only once and does ignite, but ignite doesn't deal damage, so it's not a dot, it's a single damage skill which hits in front of her, and ignited enemies will have their heal rate reduced by 25% for 7 seconds. That's pretty nice because she is meant for Galgoria and Trial of Flow. But let's move on. So this is the first part of her kit, and you will see why this is nice. Her second skill, 3 mana 15 second cooldown, deals a total of some damage, physical damage to frontal of enemies over 5 times, freezing them for 3 seconds each hit. So this can be a pretty big comboed CC, and dealing damage to an enemy inflicted by Ignite creates an explosive reaction, which is mentioned in her S4, that deals additional damage that ignores defense. Now, ignore defense is really, really nice because a lot of bosses either cannot be shredded, like say, whichever, Xanadus, but also you may not be bringing heroes that can really shred, depending on what your team composition is in a given content. For instance, Trial of Flow, I don't recall from the top of my head if you can shred his defense or not, but he does have a lot of it, so ignore defense is really, really strong on him, and you don't really bring shredding heroes anyway because you can't. So yeah, so what this means is that her S2 combos with her S1. If the enemy target is burning from Ignite, then you deal extra damage that ignores defense. And her S3 will also combo with her S1. This is a 4 mana skill and a 20 second cooldown. Deals physical damage each hit over 20 times, so that's 20 hits. Also to frontal enemies for 10 seconds. This means that after she casts it, which is about 3 to 4 seconds cast time, there will be a large AoE that lasts for 10 seconds, and each hit will be applying an attack reduction buff for 15 seconds that lasts for 10 seconds. So from the first hit to the last, it will be up, and the last hit will apply another 15% for 10 seconds. Basically, this means that it can have a 100% uptime as she casts, so near 100%. It will be almost always there, of course, depending how often she can cast. In Galgoria, if she gets stunned or if she gets banished, then she may not cast. But yeah, this is very powerful. And if the damage is done to an enemy with Ignite, it will ignite the whole Raging Storm to be a Blazing Storm, which was also mentioned in her S4, and dealing physical damage and reducing enemies' heal rate by 1.5% for 60 seconds each hit. And remember, this hits 20 times, and this effect can be stacked up to maximum 30 times. So basically, after 40 seconds in a fight, she can have 45% heal reduction base, but there is also a perk for this which will make it even nicer. So yeah, that's a lot of healing reduction, which means of course Galgaria and Trial of Flow, especially Trial of Flow, where healing on the higher stages in like 9 and 10 is very, very strong, and this is just applied without being removed, and it's there. You do not need to recast it, you do not need to time it. It just becomes so nice. So let's see how her skills actually look like. So I'm not gonna cast her as one first because that will create the fancy effects. So her skill animations are made about these forms, like barrier effects that Vespa wanted to do. This is her signature move, I guess. So as you can see, this is a very long AoE that does continuous damage. And yeah, it does last a lot of for very long. But actually, I've noticed that the attack down debuff is not shown, which is kind of curious. But now let's see what happens if we ignite it first. You can see the ignition debuff there, and then you can see the explosions going on inside the barrier. Now let's reapply that fire debuff, and then let's have a firestorm. So as you can see, it ignited the entire storm, and it's just really nicely burning, and it's also applying that healing reduction buff. Curiously, it only went up to 19, so interesting. Now, one more thing I have noticed, that actually you can reignite the storm while it's going on. So if you cast this first, when the boss is not, or the target is not burning, we can cast S1 during. And as you can see, it becomes a raging firestorm, which is pretty nice. So yeah, her auto attacks are really slow, and that really shows that fixed attack speed. However, her skill casts, if you check them out, aren't that slow. It actually feels faster than Xera. These are like 2-3 seconds costs, which are not too bad, I think, and she has very long cooldowns, so that's a bit curious. But okay, so far she has some really interesting stuff there. She has attack down, she has healing reduction and 2 skills, and she has magic damage, and she has attack increasement for herself. So that's very strong. There is a lot of scaling there. So to see how she goes on, let's just check her Transcendence page, which is of course very interesting. You can see I was using this gear to test her stuff. Now we have 80 points right now. I have selected the first 2 tiers. Let's see. Of course, second tier is the standard wizard stuff, so not gonna look into that right now. Let's see what else we have. Enemies inflicted with Ignite take 25% increased physical damage. Not too bad, but it's not a giant piece of amp. I probably wouldn't take that one, unless you really want to manual her in some situations. Now this one is, on the other hand, more interesting. It increases the duration of Ignite by 5 seconds. This means that it becomes a 12-second duration, and the cooldown is 7 seconds, which means that it can have 100% uptime even if you don't recast it. And that means that the healing reduction is there all the time, and that you can combo the skills more easily because you do not need to recast S1 during. It will not run out. So this one could be very interesting, especially in autoplay. So I think this one is one of the candidates that I would use in an Isolet build. Now moving on, each hit reduces the enemy mana by 200. Not too bad, but maybe if you wanted to use her as a support in like Shakme or maybe a PvP thing, I wouldn't really use this other than in those specific scenarios. Now, on the other hand, increases damage of explosive reaction by 60%. Or maybe this is for like Siegfried, where you need to control his mana. That might be. But okay, so increases damage of explosive reaction by 60%. Instead of freezing enemies. So explosive reaction is the defense ignoring part of her S2, which is comboed from her S1. So that part which already ignores defense will do 60% extra damage. That's pretty nice. I wouldn't skip out on this one. And then there is her S3, reduces mana cost. Okay. And changes the heal rate reduction effect of Blazing Storm to 2.5%. Remember, this stacks up 30 times. So now you are from 45% to 75% just from her S3 after casting it twice. So basically 20 seconds into the fight. Because if you, well, a bit more because you needed mana. Let's say 30 seconds or so. But yeah, you can get it up really, really fast. And after that, together with her S1, which can have 100% uptime easily, basically you have 100% healing reduction. And on Trial of Flow, that's massive, especially because this doesn't drop. You do not need to time it. You do not need to bother with it. The boss will just stop healing. That's incredible. To give you perspective, when I last ran Flow or was trying it, I did like 17 trill damage or bill, I don't even remember which one it was, and the boss healed like 10. So to put that into perspective, reducing that to 0 super early on and without having to actually put in effort, without having to time skills and stuff like that, that's massive. That just makes the fight so much quicker. But let's move on with the Transcendence perks. Additionally increases damage dealt to non-hero enemies by 1% upon creating explosive reaction. So this is her S2 combo skill, and it stacks up 15 times, so 15% non-hero damage. Not super high. We have heroes who do a lot more, but you can reach this fairly easily, like in 2 casts or something, and 15% is not too bad. It's always nice. Non-hero damage is the new thing that all DPS heroes really do need. The other option here is increases heal rate by 10% upon creating Blazing Storm. So this is tied to her Blazing Storm buff that she gives to her entire party and increases their heal rate. So if you are running a support Isolet on Galgoria, it means that you can heal even after you have received a lot of stacks from the buff or the debuff that Galgoria does, which is again pretty nice. If you want to run a low invest support Isolet, then this can help you survive longer because your healing won't be 0. So again, fairly nice. And finally, this skill, Izalette Dark, this is just mandatory in my opinion. When there is one enemy, increases own damage dealt to bosses by 15%, 50, sorry, that's a 50%. And when there are 6 or more allies, so Galgoria raid for instance, increases all allies damage dealt to bosses, excluding self, by 5%. So yeah, 5% damage buff just from being in the raid. That's pretty nice. So I would say this one is a mandatory perk as well. This one is really nice if you want her to be doing damage. This is if you want her to be support. For auto mode, I would definitely pick this one. And then if she is a support in Galgoria, you might want to pick this one, so the healing reduction is more, because that's an issue for physical teams. And you can pick this one if she needs to do damage. And then any remaining points, again, if you are like manualing, you might not need this one. It's just a convenient kind of thing. But you could also pick mana, of course. Blessing of Mana will be very important because she will need MP per second. And then you could choose either Circuit Burst, or you could choose extra crit chance and penetration. Now, only one part of her skills does ignore defense, so I would say gearing wise, let's go to gearing. So what does she need? She gets a lot of crit damage, so she doesn't need crit damage. She does need crit chance, so you do need to cap her crit chance together with your buff from your priests and stuff, but you will need 100% crit chance. After that, you will need some penetration probably, unless you are like entirely relying on her S2 ignore defense, and you will need lots of attack. You do not need speed, and you do not really need crit damage. So crit, penetration, lots of attack, and I would say MP sec, because if you look at her skills, she does have 2 mana cost here, 3 mana cost here, and 4 mana cost here. Of course, she also gains like 1.5 mana when she casts something, so it will not be too bad. But if you want to keep her skills going, especially in Flow and in Galgoria, she will need some MP sec. So that's to factor in. But you will also probably be building her with a lot of attack. This is like just random gear that I wanted to have like a good amount of crit chance without crit damage in it, so I could test. Now, if we are at gearing, let's check what her unique gears are. I did not receive anything from her gears so far, but I got her soul weapon, but I do not have her unique weapon yet, so I can't unleash it. But let's check what her unique weapon actually is. So if we go here, increases physical damage the enemy the enemy with the highest attack takes by 10% for 12 seconds, and own damage dealt to enemies by 2% every 10 seconds. So basically this will have a 100% uptime, and this damage boost effect will increase to 6 times. So this will keep going up, and as you can see, if you get her 5-star unique weapon, then this will be a 25% buff and 5% buff to her stack, so 30% after 1 minute. That's pretty nice. 30%, 5 times 6. That's pretty nice. A bit amount of amp and some damage for herself. And this is also irremovable, so pretty nice in my opinion. Let's see her unique treasures. Her skill 3 reduces attack speed of enemies within range and increases physical damage the enemies hit with Blazing Storm take by 10%. And then this can go up to 25. This doesn't seem too good to me. 25% doesn't warrant a 5-star unique treasure, and attack speed reduction is like not something you often use in PvE. A lot of bosses are immune to it actually. It feels more like PvP kind of thing. I'm not quite sure. I wouldn't really go for this one. Now this, on the other hand, her skill 2-1, which if you are building her as a DPS is probably gonna be mandatory. So this is her S21, which increases its damage at 5-star by 50% and 20% at a 0-star. So pretty nice damage increase. This also affects her base damage and her ignore defense damage. So both parts of the skill are increased when you use this unique treasure, and also it ignores the target's block effects with the explosive reaction, which is the ignore defense part. So this is very powerful for a DPS unique treasure, probably what I would be using for her. Now if I can see which one her other one is, this one is her S1. Dispels positive effects from enemies within range and additionally reduces their heal rate. So for maybe a support Isolet that needs more heal rate reduction, probably wouldn't go for this one either. The dispel is a curious thing, but yeah, I don't really see where I would be using this either. However, it reminds me that for S1 the ignite can actually be cleansed, so if you want to use her in PvP, you're probably gonna need someone who forces a cleanse from the enemy team. And nowadays, with so many people running like Loman and Fallen Frey within the same team, or the start of Fallen Frey, this might be hard to pull off because there are 2 cleanses and then your debuff is gone. So that's something to keep in mind, that the ignite is cleansable. And finally, her UT4, which increases the max number of stacks of explosive reaction by 5. Remember, this is giving her attack, and the max number of stacks of Blazing Storm by 1, which gives her 5% extra, which can give her 5% extra non-hero damage or extra healing to your raid group, depending on which role you want to fulfill her in, or to fulfill. And it increases her crit damage, but she doesn't really need crit damage, especially with the current meta where you will probably have a Lovril around, except maybe in Galgoria. So these are her unique gears. I can't show you the soul weapon, but I have checked it on Vesper's release. At base, it will create a barrier or a zone that continuously dispels the enemies within, which is very powerful. It will also increase Isolette's attack. So, and will also deploy another physical damage buff. So pretty powerful for a 0-star soul weapon. It's really, really good. A1 extends the duration of this zone, so not too bad. And then A2 gives her a massive 35% non-hero damage. So if you are not using this unique treasure 4, then your base non-hero damage will be, with the talent, it will be 15%, and you get from an A2 soul weapon, you will get an extra 35, so you go up to 50, which is nice. That's a very big damage increase for that short burst window, like say Trial of Flow. So with that, we have covered her main uses. For Trial of Flow, I have seen a video by Vero. Not sure if you guys know about him. If you play North America, maybe you do. He's one of the very skilled players, or most skilled players in the game, in my opinion. And he was testing Isolet from someone else. I believe it was someone else's Isolet. And there is a video where he clears Flow 10 with a 5-star unique weapon A0 plus 0, so base soul weapon Isolet, with a 0-star unique treasure. And that's Flow 10 with like 30 seconds left on the timer. As someone who has been doing Flow 10, I can tell you that's ridiculously strong. Flow 10 is not easy. It can be done with some lower investment characters, but it's not easy. And well, okay, Vero is very, very good. If you watch the video, you can see his skill timings are top notch. He is basically cheesing the wave by casting Fallen Frey Shield, ignoring the dispel. So that's very, very good play there. But still, that's a relatively speaking low investment Izalette there. I'm saying relatively speaking because it's a 5-star unique weapon, but the soul weapon has 0 investment. It's just the base soul weapon, and it's a base unique treasure that he's using there. And he has some very well supports along, but to prove the point, he's not using their soul weapon. So Frey is not using her soul weapon, and he was using Veronica, who is also not using his soul weapon, her soul weapon, sorry. So the damage potential on Flow and the healing reduction is very, very strong. So in my opinion, Izalette might just be the strongest DPS there, or one of the strongest, definitely up there. She is very, very good, even at a relatively low investment, 5-star. I know some of you guys will be telling me that 5-star Izalette is not a low investment, but we are talking about endgame content here, guys, which is tailored for 8 to 20 characters and can be hard with 8 to 20 characters. So compared to that, a 5-star A0 is very, very low investment. That's my point. Now Galgoria, she can be both a DPS, where she does okay. I've seen like 300-400 million DPS runs, which is pretty good. Of course, not 1 bill like Cloudie does, but this is fairly good. And she can be a very low investment support, where I've seen someone use her in like Galgoria 6 with like 0 investment, and she was just there to allow them to live till nearly the end of the fight, which is really good because after with like 90 seconds left on the clock, basically your healing usually stops. You take so much damage that you just cannot keep going, and your heroes will start dying off. So these are her 2 main roles, I believe, Galgoria and Trial of Flow. Her skills are very limited in there, because of the cooldowns and because they cannot be reset. So I think on scoring content she will not be that good. Also, she can be really messed up by diver characters that get behind her, make her turn around. So certain contents like Eclipse or like Labyrinth are not necessarily her niche. Not saying that she can be used. I believe Twebby has used her at like a 3-star unique weapon and went up to like stage 25 in Eclipse, which is not bad for a 3-star unique weapon, but there are betters out there, and that was, yeah, so not necessarily her best role, but because of the ignore defense, she could be like a secondary DPS in a team who is mainly there to nuke the bosses at each stage, which could be actually pretty beneficial. So that might be an option. Also, she gives a lot of healing, which is not bad. and she can give damage reduction to the team, which is also good. So yeah, as a second DPS, she could be actually really good. Take someone for the waves and then let Isolet nuke the hell out of the bosses. That might be a valid strategy, so I wouldn't write her off. And then finally, like Shakme, which is the last endgame content, well, her defense ignoring skill doesn't really help her there, and it's physical damage, not magic, so her passive isn't so helpful. Plus, because her attack speed is logged, she will be decimated by small Shakme's, and I believe big Shakme's skill as well, so probably not good there. And yeah, I mean, for stages, probably may not be the best uses either because of her long cooldowns and her reliance on S1 to be cast. But yeah, that's my take on Isolet. I believe she's very, very strong for the 2 or maybe 3 contents where she can be used at. 2, and then Eclipse with a question mark. I wouldn't recommend her necessarily as a first character. If you wanna go Fizz, then take the pink-haired girl here under her, and maybe Izalette as a second one. That could be a pretty good combo. Yeah, that's my take on her. I hope you guys like her. I hope some of you will at least get to have some fun with her. If I have the resources, I will definitely build her. Maybe just to make my life easier on Flow. Also, by the time I got her to 5-star unique weapon, I would probably be done with Flow anyway, knowing my awakening luck. So yeah, this has been my guide for Isolet, guys, or my takes on Isolet. Let me know what you think of her. And yeah, my voice is dying, so gonna call it here. This has been Cloudie for now. See you in the next one. Bye bye.